Dave Talks Ball on this October 24th, 2024 episode, folks. Favorite time of the year. The fall weather's changing. It's getting cooler. I don't really like that. It's starting to get a little dark early. Does anyone know the exact date? What is it? Usually the first week of November that we kind of start seeing the time change. Great time of year. We got playoff games this week in college football, guys. Things we couldn't say over the last few years. And maybe that's a little bit of a stretch. We could always say it, but now these are so much more impactful games. I mean, Alabama, Missouri is an elimination game from the playoff, I think. We got a big driver's seat game, as you know, College Station, blackout at Kyle Field, LSU, A&M, Ole Miss. I think eye test has to look good this week. I got a couple teams on byes, but it should be a fun weekend across the board. We got college basketball in just a week as well, guys. Again, to my point, best time of the year, cool weather, fall season, think of the college football season, college football race, college basketball starting. Kentucky had a scrimmage against, I think, Kentucky Wesleyan, who Louisville lost to last year in an exhibition. But Kentucky looked good last night. I thought the Brea kid looked good. I thought the San Diego State transfer Lamont Butler looked good last night. Mark Pope and them are going to have a team. We're going to have that college basketball preview out, myself and Chris Phillips, next week, guys. But we got to get a lot to get to. We got two phenomenal guests, Brad Crawford from 247 Sports, Blake Ruffino from Are You Serious Sports, going to come over and talk a little LSU, Texas A&M. But before we get right into previews, guys, y'all know how I get about Thursday. The prep all week to prepare for these predictions are what makes this job so much fun. Can't wait to start right off the bat before we get Blake on around about 18 minutes and then Brad around 8:45. But before we get going, guys, remember this episode is brought to you by our buddies over at mybookie.ag. Use code SECU at sign up to receive a special welcome offer on your first deposit, guys. There's tons of bets across the line. I mean, we have phenomenal one, Pittsburgh, Syracuse playoff implications if you want to bet on that tonight. Tomorrow, got a big group of 5 one. Boise State at UNLV. I mentioned the SEC games this week. You have Navy, Notre Dame. If you want to bet, go use our buddies over at mybookie.ag. But let's get right to it, guys. First game, we're going chronological order here. Let's get right to it. Oklahoma at Ole Miss. Noon Eastern on ESPN. Ole Miss currently favored by 20 point total, 48.5. Our boy Ons the Gray, who I already see in the chat, baby. Loyal listener. I appreciate him coming back. Big Sooner guy here. Been a rough season, but he's still coming to the show every Monday and Thursday night, guys. Want to give him a little golf clap there. Right here in the middle, right off the bat. We're starting off with the Sooners and the Rebels. He's probably hoping I'm giving him some good news. We'll see. But both teams need this game in some kind of positive momentum for different reasons. Ole Miss still in playoff contention. They need to be big Georgia fans rolling up to this to get that signature win, but that's a conversation for another day. Georgia doesn't matter if you don't take care of business of Oklahoma this week. But coming off a bye week after the tough loss against LSU that I thought you probably should have won that game. You led the whole way until they walked you off in overtime. Oklahoma, been bad all year offensively. Defense, it's been there. But they made a coaching change on Sunday, firing Seth Luttrell on Sunday. We talked about it on Monday's show. Some of it's not Seth Luttrell's fault. I mean, you've been missing 5 of your top 7 receivers all year. Offensive line's been all over the place. Quarterback to Michael Hawkins and Jackson Arnold, who Jackson Arnold's getting the start this week. Joe John Finley, who I worked with at Texas A&M, he will be calling the plays now, tight ends coach as well. So that's a change there. Oklahoma 4-3, but it feels like we're talking about them at 3-4 or 2-5, if you're honest. But what kind of Oklahoma team do we get? Or have they quit? Which is wild to say because they're only 4-3 and still have a lot to play for down the stretch. I do think we get a motivated Ole Miss team, though. I mean, why wouldn't we? I think this is an eye test. Ole Miss can't just – I would still be real down. I'm a person – I should say this. I'm not down on Ole Miss, but I could see where people would be down if Ole Miss goes and wins this game 24-17 or something. I think it's a game – I don't know if you got to cover because 20 is a lot, but you got to look good against the Oklahoma team. It's really reeling. But I think we do get a motivated Ole Miss team. But what's going to happen, like I mentioned, Ole Miss needs to look good. It can't be a sloppy Kentucky-type game where instead of you lost it, you make a stop on 4th and 8 instead of the 65-yard pass. You get that stop. But still, that's not going to suffice this week to the Ole Miss fans. This is an eyeball test game. You've had 2 weeks to get right up front on the offensive line. Oklahoma has been as good as anyone on defense all year, but what is their mentality right now? I believe Brent Venables will have his defensive unit prepared, but the bigger question is, what is this offense going to look like under Joe John Finley? You can't change an entire offensive scheme in a week. I know you're starting Jackson Arnold now. That's a good decision. But really, what is this offensive line and wide receiver unit going to look like when they take this show on the road? Add in, Ole Miss is a pretty good defensive front this year, defensive unit across the board. I think Ole Miss big. I think they get right this week. I think they have to. Again, I'm going to be judging you on how you look. And usually I'm just hey, get the win, move on, especially in today's college football with so much parity with the transfer portal. I think Ole Miss needs to look good this week. Give me Ole Miss 31-10. Give me Ole Miss 31-10. Feel pretty good about that. Kind of like the under. We'll talk about a little money-making weekend. I forgot to mention that right off the bat. We'll be doing money-making weekend, week 9 as well. We're sitting at 40%. I think we've been at 39, 40% all season. We still got a couple of weeks, though. I promised you 55%. I haven't delivered the last few weeks like I have, but we'll get better on that. But I do kind of like the over in this one at the 48.5, and I like Ole Miss minus 20. It's a little sneak preview in the money-making weekend, but I do think Ole Miss gets the 31-10 win. Our boy On's the great Lowell listener. There he is. Hopefully he's seeing something that Seth – oh, sorry, wrong one. Rough season, but if it ain't Crimson and Cream, it ain't for Ons. Appreciate the loyalty to the Sooner fan base. Ons, you're modest on the 10. You know they'll go for 2 and a miss. Yeah, I mean, it's tough to predict too much offensive production here with the Sooners. We'll see. But that's it for that one. I think Ole Miss gets the 31-10 win. I feel pretty good about that one. On the other side of the state, Arkansas at Mississippi State. Arkansas currently favored by 6. Point total 57.5, setting the tone for you here. Arkansas better be locked in. This is a very dangerous game for an Arkansas team that is trying to lock in at least 6 wins, which I think that keeps Sam Pittman's job if he doesn't retire. Just throw that out there. You lose this game, though, and 6 is in jeopardy. Mississippi State has looked better every week. Give Jeff Levy and his staff their flowers. They've kind of honed in. And again, in your first year, I mean, you're not going to get to 4 or 5 wins, I think, this year. I mean, I think your goal is probably to get to 3, win a conference game. This is probably their best chance to go win that conference game. I've liked what Michael Van Buren has done so far. The numbers aren't going to wow you. 53% passer, but he's 6 touchdowns and 2 interceptions as a true freshman. Excuse me. Sorry, one piece of hair fell in my mouth. But I like Michael Van Buren here. I like it. This may be a blessing in disguise across the board. I mentioned it on Monday. You never want to see Blake Shapen get hurt or anything like that. But I think you're getting the true freshman in here with a connection from Oklahoma. With he's from Baltimore, St. Francis, but he was interested in Oklahoma. That's where the connection with Jeff Levy was. I think you're kind of like, hey, I'm glad we got to experiment with him on the road at Texas, at Georgia, against a really good defense at Texas A&M last week. We're going to feel better going into the spring where we can throw more of our playbook on him and we can be better heading into 2025. I think it's a blessing in disguise. I like what I've seen from him so far. They've even gotten the run game going, which was awful in the beginning of the season. Devon Booth, Johnny Daniels, not Jack, Johnny Daniels, getting it going on the ground game. They started to play some complimentary football as well. But if there's a conference game that Mississippi State and Jeff Levy think they can get, it is probably this weekend. Maybe Missouri, depending on the health of Brady Cook down the line. But what is going to happen? Like I mentioned, perfect spot for Mississippi State here. Arkansas coming off an emotional, not emotional, LSU controlled that whole game, but a game where the stadium was rocking at Razorback Stadium. Arkansas was coming off a bye after the big win against Tennessee. They thought they had LSU right where they wanted them last week. They didn't. But what Arkansas do we get? Jaquindon Jackson, the running back's out. I think he's one of the better yards after contact backs right there with Rocket Sanders, Le'Veon Moss, that conversation. I trust Bobby Petrino over Mississippi State defensive coordinator Coleman Hutzler, but can Taylon Green just be okay? Can he just be okay? I think that's the question. If he makes some mistakes and Mississippi State's +2 in turnover margin or better, I think that's the recipe for Mississippi State to get their first conference win and second win of the season. On the other side, I think both the Arkansas defense with Travis Williams and Mississippi State's offense with Jeff Levy, I think they're both going to have some success, make their plays at times. I think that side of the ball will cancel out. I think both of them will make some plays here and there. The question in here is, does Taylon Green just play okay and not have a horrific game that loses this game? I think if he can go into Davis Wade, he doesn't have to play perfect, Doesn't even have to play really well. I just think as long as it's an above average performance, I like Arkansas in this one. I think you do get that, but I do think this is a close game because I don't like where this game is on the schedule for Arkansas. Mississippi State playing with as much confidence as possible right now. I know they haven't won any of these games against Texas, Georgia, or A&M, but since that Florida game, you like the confidence they're playing with. You know they've had this one circled. Jeff Lebby's like, hey, guys, we can get this win. They're coming into our house. They may be overlooking us a little bit. They got a game against Ole Miss next week. They just lost to a team they thought they should have beat last week coming off a bye week. They had a big win 2 weeks ago against 3 weeks ago now against Tennessee. They're not looking at us, guys. Tell you, it's going to be a scary game. I think Taylon Green is just good enough. I think the thing that puts me over the edge of Bobby Petrino over Coleman Hustler. Give me Arkansas 34-7. Close one. I mean, that's why Vegas agrees. I mean, that's why the line's 6 right now. Next, again, chronological order, folks. Missouri at Alabama. Alabama currently favored by 17. This line was 13.5 yesterday, but I think the injury report with Brady Cook being doubtful again as of tonight. They released another, remember the SEC now, new rule. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they released these injury reports. Brady Cook still doubtful with that high ankle sprain he suffered against Auburn last week. Came back in the fourth quarter, as you know, won the game. Nate Noel, starting running back, also doubtful. Missouri's banged up. There's no sugarcoating. Missouri is definitely banged up heading into this one. The point total, though, is 51.5 right now. Again, Alabama favored by 17. It opened up at 13.5. Setting the tone for you. Both teams have not looked great the last few weeks. Let's call a spade, folks. Bama ain't looked the same since the second half of Georgia, or since the first half of Georgia. Missouri just hasn't really put it all together for one game yet. Boston College, they were all over the place. Vanderbilt, they could have lost in double overtime. At A&M, they got totally embarrassed, shellacked. Auburn, they probably should have lost the game. They were down double digits going into the fourth quarter. It was the second time in Auburn football program history where they lost a game when they were up by double digits going into the fourth quarter. So let that sink in. Now, to be fair to Missouri, again, like they didn't have Brady Cook the whole time. It was a Drew Pine game, the transfer from Notre Dame, who should have been a serviceable backup, but he was pretty bad last week. Missouri, pretty beat up. I mentioned it. Brady Cook, Nate Noel, doubtful on the injury report. Is Jalen Milroe banged up? Some say no. Some say yes. I saw Roman Harper was saying, hell no, he's just playing bad right now. That's fair, too. But I thought his front leg against Tennessee, though, he didn't look comfortable in the pocket from a footwork standpoint. It looked like he couldn't straighten that front leg when he was trying to deliver and spray the ball across the field, which he did a horrific job at Knoxville, by the way. Again, one of the worst Alabama quarterback performances I can remember in the past decade. Right up there probably with his fourth quarter performance against Texas last year. But Alabama still has playoff goals and aspirations right in front of them. They win this game, they can get into the bye week before they go. I mean, your season's on the line in Baton Rouge. If you win this week, your season's on the line in Baton Rouge. That's what it will come down to. You having to go win at Tiger Stadium, most likely at night. That's what it'll come down to. If there's a team that needs the bye week, if there's a player that needs the bye week, it is Alabama and Jalen Milroe. The thing, if you're an Alabama fan, it should get you excited. If you can get through Saturday and beat Missouri at home. The last time Alabama came off a bye week, they played their best half of football we've seen in a very long time, even going back through the Nick Saban era. Maybe they can go back to the drawing board, rally the troops, circle the wagons, whatever you want to call it. I mean, they're certainly capable of beating that LSU. I think it's kind of a coin flip game. But it being at Tiger Stadium, just like how I felt last week against Tennessee, I don't think they're disciplined enough to go win in a hostile environment. That's how Alabama used to go win those games back in the prime and exhibit. They didn't beat themselves on the road, and that's what it takes winning on the road in this league. Missouri's still in the playoff race too, folks. I feel like no one's talking about that. They have one loss, the embarrassing loss to A&M. But if they went out, they're probably in. I think Missouri's the only team in the SEC, though. It doesn't get in with 2 losses because the schedule's just so bad. They still got Oklahoma, Arkansas. Who am I missing? Missouri football. There's not a lot of a lot of heavy hitters. They need this game in Tuscaloosa to hang on that resume because Oklahoma at home, that's not going to get you much anywhere. At South Carolina, dangerous game, but I don't know if that gets you a lot of places from a resume standpoint. I'm talking if they have 2 losses here. Mississippi State at Mississippi State, that does nothing for you. And then Arkansas at home, that does nothing for you. So if you finish 10-2 and your 2 losses are an embarrassing loss to A&M, and then you lose to Alabama just in general, let's just say it's a bad loss by double digits, I don't care if you win out. Oklahoma at home, at South Carolina, at Mississippi State, and Arkansas at home is not moving the needle. Let's call it a spade, folks. If Missouri goes 10-2, they'll probably miss the playoffs. They got to finish 11-1. They still could, but they have to win this weekend. This is a playoff elimination game here, guys. I mean, let it sink in. I just spelled it out for you. It's a playoff game. I think Missouri, again, is the only 10-2 team from the SEC that's going to be left out. But what is going to happen? I thought this game was going to be close. I said it on the prediction with Cole Thompson. I had Alabama 30-28. We filmed that on Monday. Massive injury report that came out yesterday from Missouri that they put out last night. They followed it up today. I actually want to check it out. I peeked at it. Nothing really changed. You'll see the Missouri-Alabama injury report. Let's see. Just want to keep it straight for you guys. All right, here it came out an hour ago. For Missouri, Mookie Cooper out, Darius Smith at the end, they've been out. Nate Noel doubtful, Brady Cook doubtful. If it's Drew Pine, the quarterback that started against Auburn last week, the Notre Dame transfer for Tim, they're going to have a hard time winning this game. Sidney Williams, safety questionable. Travis Johnson, safety questionable. Dalen Carnell, safety questionable. Joseph Charleston, questionable. Caden Green on the offensive line is questionable. Tight end Brett Norfleet is questionable. And Marquise Johnson, wide receiver, probable. I actually think Brady Cook's probably going to play in this game. I could see Eli Drinkwitz is just weird enough to just kind of play this game. Maybe he's pulling the opposite of what Mike Elko played on him. Remember, he thought Marcel Reed was starting, didn't let his sister even go out to practice. She's on Missouri's recruiting staff. Well, Mike Elko played a chestnut checkers move, played kind of with him, and we know how that game played out. For Bama, Keon Sabbs out at safety. Caden Jones will be out. And Red Morgan, yeah. Because Bray Hubbard from Ocean Springs, Mississippi, where I'm from, he will be getting the start for Alabama this week due to injuries, really, across the board. Oh, I didn't mean to move to that one. But what's going to happen? Again, I told you, I thought this game was going to be close till I saw the Missouri injury report. Either way, high ankle sprain for Brady Cook, he's not going to be 100%. I think he's going to play, but I think he will need to be close to 100% for them to win this game. I think they have some matchup advantages here with that Alabama secondary that's banged up. I mean, you got Luther Burden, who played a bad game last week, muffed a punt, dropped some passes. Granted, he didn't have a starting quarterback. Got to give him that. I think this could be a Theo Weiss game if they can get him to rock. But I think this game comes down to what Jalen Milroe do we get? His feet were all over the place. His feet, eyes, he didn't trust him. I mean, there's a couple of plays. I talked about it on Monday's show. 3rd and 2, Jam Miller motions out to the flat. I think you have Jeremy Bernard coming in on a quick crosser. He is literally just staring right at him, both of them wide open. 3rd and 2. And remember, it's a cover 0 blitz. They're bringing 6 from Tennessee and Tim Banks. It's man to man. If you dip it out there to Jay Miller, at the very least, he picks up the first down. If he makes the backer miss, he may score. No, he takes off to the right side trying to look for Ryan Williams for probably his 15th target. He ended up with 18 targets. That's just a lot. If you're throwing to somebody that much, that means you're just trying to play hero ball and just trying to make plays. Again, Julio Jones, Amari Cooper never got 18 targets in one game, folks. I mean, I know it's Ryan Williams. He's a freak show, but still, Jalen Milroe played one of the worst quarterback performances I've seen in an Alabama uniform in a long time. Probably broke his own since his own performance against Texas last year. I mean, some say A.J. McCarron against LSU in 2011, the 9-6 game. Yeah, that wasn't great either, but still, for conversation purpose, we'll stay on that. What Jalen Milroe do we get here? I lean Alabama wins this one by double digits now because of the injuries. I kind of like Alabama maybe even to cover here. If Brady Cook and Missouri were healthy, I think this is a very close game similar to South Carolina. The difference is, though, Missouri doesn't have the front 7 that South Carolina has, or Georgia has, or Tennessee has. They don't. That's the difference here. I know Missouri's defense is really good on 3rd down. I just don't know how many 3rd downs Alabama's going to be in. I think Bama gets right. I think a lot of people are probably going to be, oh, Bama, here we go. Big game going into Baton Rouge. That's where I tell you, hold up just a minute, my friend. Just because of one home win against Missouri does not mean Bama's ready to go run on to the playoffs. You got to be week to week with this Alabama team. I think Alabama's probably going to end up winning this game. Give me Alabama 34-14. I think 34-14 is the final in this game. Again, I thought this would be close, but you see the injury report for Missouri, and it just doesn't do it for you. It just doesn't do it. I mean, I don't even know how you can be really excited about it. If Brady Cook's not 100% and the high ankle sprains are hard to overcome, I don't see them getting the straight win in this one because I think the difference is Brady Cook's not healthy. If he does play, Alabama should come after him. If it's Drew Pine, I don't see a path to victory. I mean, if Alabama loses to Drew Pine or hell, even a Brady Cook, not a 100% team, Kalen DeBoer may be packing the bags. And I'm not even a guy. It's not saying Kalen DeBoer's not the guy. It's his first year. I had Alabama with 2 losses at this point. I thought it was Georgia and Tennessee. He flip-flopped the Georgia Vanderbilt games. I had him losing to Tennessee. I never felt good going into the year with that one. But I think they win. Missouri's just too banged up. Bama, Jalen Milroe, no one needs a bye week worse than this team. I mean, it's been a rough 4 weeks, 3.5 weeks if you just include the second half against Georgia, the game against Vandy, the game against South Carolina last week. They need to go regroup, get to the drawing board. I think they have a pretty good performance because, again, I don't think Missouri's front seven is very good. I think Bama's going to try to go establish the run in the middle with J.M. Miller and Justice Haynes like they should. I just think the injuries in that front seven Missouri are the difference. Give me Bama, 34-14. Again, I thought this would be close if the injuries weren't as bad as they look. Joel Burris, appreciate you listening, brother. Drink got something in that game plan. Yeah, I think Drink and Kirby Moore, the offensive coordinator, are really good schemers. I think they could. I love the way they move Brady Cook around. They do a phenomenal job moving him, not Brady Cook, Luther Burden all the way around in the backfield, in the slot, on the outside. There's matchups to be won. They're probably watch the film and be like, yeah, I mean, even the first half against Tennessee, Nico Iamaleava wasn't even hitting them, but they were there. They were open. Bama's banged up. Keon Sabb, that Husky position's key. What's Devontae Smith look like? He wasn't on the injury report, but Bray Hubbard will be getting the start. So Bama's banged up. There's going to be some plays to be had there, but if it's Drew Pine, I just don't really see it. South Carolina's defense strong. You're right. Not only strong, they're scoring. I mean, they're scoring 17 points right off the bat. South Carolina's defense is nasty, dude. They're scoring, winning them football games right now. Joel Burst, the Gamecocks, to protect the football, they beat the Tide. Yeah. I think you can make a case for both cases there. If they don't turn the ball over, South Carolina easily win that game. I think if Bama gets the stop on 4th and 9 right before the half, game may have been a little bit of a rout. But no, I think you're right. That game could have gone all over the place. Girth Brooks, I hate that the Big Ten is the big dog in football now. Yeah, I mean, you can make the case those 2 teams are the top 2 teams in the sport. Oregon and Ohio State. I mean, I think you can get an argument from me. But again, I don't think there's a dominant team in the sport right now. Everyone has holes. You have a lot of teams that could get got on any given day right now. But let's go to our buddy over from Are You Serious Sports, our guy, Blake Ruffino. Blake, you were on the last, what was it? I think I had you on the first episode of the season. It was the USC game in Vegas. I'm hoping for your sake the result isn't the same. But hey, short memory from you and the Tiger fans, dude. I picked you on that game against both USCs this year. I know I'm probably not welcome in the state right now, though. North, east, west, south borders. They wouldn't even let me come in through the Gulf of Mexico right now.
I am very much ashamed to call you a friend right now, Dave, if I got to be honest with you. Because
it took a lot for you to muster up to even come on the show.
Yeah, it really did. Because, listen, man, the insubordination that you have shown the LSU Tigers the last 3 weeks is not falling upon me. You know, Chris, Dave, I was telling Chris that if he picked against the Tigers this week, that he would also be banned. He already said the black unis for A&M were really sick. So, you know, but in all seriousness, I know that all joking and kidding aside, I do think that this LSU fan base feels a little bit doubted about their team. Yeah, and Dave, I think there comes a part where I'm kind of playing into the sarcasm a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm using because I know that you know I'm just playing around with you, but I do think that people are like, because they came out of the Ole Miss game, right?
Yeah.
They beat Ole Miss, and everybody's like, oh, man, Ole Miss isn't as good as we thought that they were. They go to Arkansas. Well, they beat the dog snot out of Arkansas, and they're like, oh, Arkansas is not as good as we thought that they were. And then I think that they're just like, so wait, we're moving goalposts now on our team. So I think, Dave, that's what more of the LSU fan base, and I'm just kind of trying to play into the narrative a little bit.
No, I think that's fair. Honestly, I was more impressed with the win last week than I was even the Ole Miss game a little bit. Just like from a business perspective, from a standpoint of, hey, Arkansas, I mean, the stars aligned. They had a bye week, could have got rested. The place is rocking. LSU coming off an emotional win. I mean, you know, it's hard to go get up right after that. And Arkansas is that kind of Jekyll and Hyde team. What team are you getting? And I thought in LSU came out of the gates. I know it was a one possession game with like 5-6 minutes left, but it felt like, in the third quarter, but it felt like LSU controlled that game from start to finish for the most part. And it never was really in doubt if you thought Arkansas was actually going to win the game.
No, and Dave, to your point, I think that, it's easy, and you've been in the game, so you know that this is different. I think that addition by subtraction fundamentally, schematically has helped them defensively. And I think you're seeing that with Major Burns because you're not putting Harold out there, right? And so Major Burns being a more sure tackler, okay, than what Harold has been, has really promoted this team. But look, you're right, going on the road, he showed it against Arkansas. Look, Arkansas was the 8th best offense in the country going into that game, Dave. And so then you turn around and that defense blanks them. They gave up 7 points, right? The 3 points that they gave up, Dave, they went 13 yards and kicked a field goal. What are we talking about? So I think that the defense more than anything kind of showed out. And look, going into this game, can you be physical against a really good offensive line and A&M? So it's another really good challenge. Now, Dave, I do power rankings, like my own system, just to kind of keep up with it. Like, what do I think about teams? And especially against like spreads and stuff like that. But me and Joe do it on our national show, but we only do top 10, but we keep a top 25. I had Arkansas a top 25 team last week, Dave, to be real with you.
Yeah.
And so if that's the case, and the way that I view it through a prism is, okay, so you beat a top 10 Ole Miss, you beat our number 24 team in Arkansas, and now you're facing our number 12 team or number 10 team in A&M. So that would be 3 straight games where we have a team that's power rated inside the top 25 that they're going up against. And look, here's the thing that I think was interesting going through all of this. When Brian Kelly got hired, I think people were wondering that, like, when would the quote-unquote Notre Dame of the South take over? Boy, this feels a lot like the discipline that he had there, right? Like, not overlooking opponents, winning games that you're supposed to, and they might just not have been talented in some of the teams that they played at the end. But I think that there's a difference now. I think that this team, for whatever reason, has caught a little bit of fire and confidence, and they feel good about themselves. Dave, if they don't turn the football over, they're a dangerous football team. I'm fully convinced, because I do think that Garrett is making better decisions at the line of scrimmage. I think they're making better decisions in the passing game in some instances. So now you get to go test it again, and then you go into a bye week, and then you have Bama. So there's a lot of momentum riding for the Tigers right now.
How long ago does that USC loss seem to you?
To me, not that long ago, because, I feel like, Dave, that this goes by too fast, because when you're in it in the season like us, it's like
it's already November.
It's all right. It's already November. In reference to the question of the context of your question, right? What you're saying is, man, how much has this team grown, right? I think is what you're, in my humble opinion, a lot, specifically defensively. Dave, think about this. I keep saying your name a lot, but think about this. If you're a coach, which you have been, and you've been in buildings, okay, I don't like taking like runs out of like big runs out of games, right? Like I don't let like that happen in reality. But I think that something that's interesting, we talked about that defensive line not being good, or that front seven probably having struggles this year. It's the best thing that they do is stop the run. And if you do take out those 2 long runs they gave up against South Carolina, Dave, they're number 18. Right, like they've done.
This defense is better without Harold Perkins now. Like overall, I think I was saying it kind of jokingly 4 weeks ago, but when you go back and watch the film, you're like, everybody just looks more comfortable in their role.
I think that that's more of a thing than anything. They're not better in the pass rush game, without a doubt. They're not. Because he 1000% he garnered so much attention that Braden Swinson went off, right? Because everybody's sliding the line to him. They're keying in on him. So Braden Swinson goes off. Well, he went up against Ole Miss too, but I think you get my point there. I think that from a run game perspective, yes, but it really wasn't him that was making the busted plays, though. You know what I mean? The busted play with Lenore Sellers wasn't on him. The one with Rocket Raheem or Sellers and Sanders. Neither one are on him. I think it just so happens to be a little bit of a coincidence. But look, I think that they're playing fantastic, to be real with you. And I do think that they get to actually play defense instead of putting a square peg in a round hole, if that makes sense.
Boy, question for you randomly. This isn't even really an LSU question. I'm just interested because I know you go. I watch you and Joe still. Where does Joe live, by the way?
New Jersey. He's
in the north.
He's across the river, literally across the river from New York. When we went up there for Bleacher Report, he's literally across the river.
So I'm going to ask you, you go back and watch all these games as well. Are you how much do you factor in? Because, we start hearing these college football playoff discussions, and I'm bringing this up because I saw Heather Dinich was bringing up, or I think I got her name right. The girl, the woman off ESPN that does the playoff rankings, Heather Dinich, and she was saying something like the committee she was hearing the sources are going to take into the eye test more. She was talking about Alabama if they finish 10-2 making the playoffs, and she's like, if they
funny how that works, isn't it?
Yeah, like the eye test. She was like, right now they're committing so many penalties that don't work. When you're evaluating and you're ranking teams, you talk about your ranking system here. How much do you bake into your rankings, just like stats, stuff like that? You talk about LSU being top 15 run defense, or are you more of an eye test where you're like, nah, I'm going to go with what my eyes are telling me?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, a lot of it's probably eye test, but I do throw in every stat in there, right, for the teams that are in there. And sometimes it takes me a long time because there's a team like BYU that comes out of nowhere, right, that and I only do it like a top 25. So by the way, BYU is not even my top 25, but that's neither here nor there.
You had UCF favored this week?
UCF is favored this week. Yeah. But they're an anomaly.
Yeah.
But I mean, but anyway, I do look at eye test a lot because we're breaking down so many games and we get to film on so many games. I look at like a team. Why Alabama? Like, what are their two losses that you don't like? What do you know about them? Okay, so Tennessee. They haven't played anybody, Dave, that they wouldn't have already played. This isn't because of realignment. You're going off an eye test because of realignment. Oh, well, conferences are different. What does the eye test tell us about Oregon, Ohio State? No, Alabama is a very highly undisciplined football team. They were like that under Nick. By the way, I compared this LSU team potentially because of a lot of same stuff. Saban's team in 2003 at LSU, Dave, they had one loss that year. Saban's teams have always been high penalty.
Yeah, he's only had two undefeated teams ever, 2020 and 9.
Right, but they've that game against Florida in 2003, they had 12 penalties for 150 yards.
I remember that game. That was in Baton Rouge too, wasn't it? Chris Leak,
Ron Zook and the boys coming in there. So when I look at a team like Alabama, okay, so how are you going to tell me that they're one of the top 15 teams? That's okay, maybe. But, Dave, they're getting lost in man-to-man coverage. They're not making adjustments on the back end. They can't run the football against more decent opponents. They're not even trying against Georgia. Jalen Milroe, I think, is hurt, but that's neither here nor there. Maybe I'm wrong, okay?
No, I agree with you. I think something's there.
Something's off. I mean, because he's got 5 turnovers in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then
you're right. I think you can tell something. I don't know. I think it's his front leg, the way he just can't straighten that front leg when he's trying to go plant it when he was throwing. He was awful last week.
He was awful last week. But then here's the thing, though. Then you asked him to go in there and throw the ball 45 times. Yeah. I gotta be real with you. I would rather, if you're going to make him only sit in the pocket, why aren't you putting in Ty Simpson? And if it's that bad, then, I mean, he's hurting you. So I think that Bama has talent. When I look at them, I don't think that they play with cohesion at all. They're not a team.
No complementary football.
Zero. Like, for example, let's turn to Vandy for a minute. Dave, they're running a triple option type of system in so many different ways. Yeah. They got a strong backfield in the pistol. So they're going to read the end, okay, or they're going to pitch it, or Pavia is going to keep it, right? Dave, they have a linebacker and a defensive lineman filling the same gap. Yeah. So then Pavia picks up a third down. But that's that's not on Kane Womack either. You tell me, did Nick Saban not teach gap integrity?
Yeah.
I mean, like, so that means to tell me then that you're an undisciplined football team. So if you're just talking about Bama, then yes. But I mean, sure, eye test. I mean, I don't look. Heather Dinich last year had Florida State at 2, even without Jordan Travis in her, because her sources told her. I mean, come on. I mean, okay. I mean, maybe she's right. I don't know, but I mean, what do you think? I mean, it's a great question.
I mean, not really wasn't even asking about Alabama, but I'm with you. Like, I think this is what I think happens now. I previewed the Bama game right before you got on. I thought before the whole injury report for Missouri came out with Brady Cook, Nate Noel being out, I predicted 30-28 out. I thought it was going to be very similar to South Carolina. I think the only difference is in this game a little bit is Missouri's front seven, I don't think is near as good as South Carolina's or Tennessee. So I think Bama could establish some kind of run. I just didn't trust Milroe. I mean, if Brady Cook isn't 100% or they have to play Drew Pine, I don't see them winning this game. And I think if Bama were to win big and look good this week, the unfortunate part is I think people would hype up in the bye week and like, all right, maybe they got themselves back. And I don't think there's another team in the country that needs the bye week or another player that needs the bye week like Jalen Milroe. I just think in a neutral field, maybe they could beat LSU. I just don't think this team's disciplined enough to go win in Baton Rouge. I just don't. The penalties, I just don't think they can put together a full game, which is what it will take to go win there. I mean, hell, this game at LSU's offense this week. So I picked A&M this week. I didn't even got to that preview yet. So people listening, I ruined that for you. But I don't see Bama going to win in Baton Rouge in 2 weeks. But I think if Bama were to look good this week, if Jalen Milroe were to look good, I could see a lot of the media can make, maybe they flipped it on. Maybe that's all they need. I'm like, I don't know. I thought if Missouri was healthy, I think this game would be really close.
Well, and I think that they're saying the eye test. So to your bigger point, the eye test so they can put specific teams from specific conferences in, right? I mean, because Pitt right now. I mean, for anyone rewatching, we're live during the Pitt game. I mean, Pitt's going to be 7-0. They're up 31-0 on Syracuse, right? They're the number 19 team in the country. So, Dave, I ask you, as a 10-2 Pitt team, is that the same as a 9-3 Bama team? So I feel like when they say eye test, I think that that's what they mention more than anything. How can we justify without the logic being there, right? Like, I mean, they used eye test last year with Bama and Florida State. It was the right call. I'm not saying it was
at the time, Alabama would beat Florida State at the end of the year that year. Yeah, I mean, 100%. You're comparing those specific teams.
Yeah, no doubt. But I think that that's what they're doing because, again, let's just say 10-2 Pitt versus 10-2 Bama, LSU, A&M, Texas, Georgia. I mean, Ole Miss. I mean, is it comparable? Is it the same? No, it's not the same. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you can't say any of this is the same in the SEC this year.
All right, switching over to the matchup you've been prepping for all week. I've been prepping along with some other SEC games as well. I know you do too. You and Joe's show, Rafino and Joe, y'all get on there and preview more than just LSU games, obviously. But what are the matchups you're looking forward to in this matchup on Saturday night? Like, what are you on both sides of the football for both teams? What are you looking forward to? What are some advantages you think LSU has? What are some advantages you think A&M has going into the game?
Yeah, I think this D-line for A&M versus LSU O-line, can how big was Walter Nolan? Can LSU establish a running game? Mississippi State last week ran the football on A&M, 152 yards. I think that is an interesting thing because I know that Turner and Stewart and Scourton and Scooby Williams, that front seven is really good on paper. But I also can't get out of my head Bowling Green, Mississippi State, Arkansas in moments, right? Like I can't get that out of my mind. Now, they did good against the run against Arkansas, but then I look at State and say, well, that's more comparable to what LSU would want to do. So I think Scourton versus Campbell, I mean, that's a top 5 pick versus a top 10 pick, right? I mean, that's an insane matchup. But LSU's only allowed 2 sacks all year. And, Dave, even in those sacks, Garrett Nussmeier ran into both of them, right? Like he literally ran into the sack. So it's not as if it wouldn't have even gone down as a pressure if he would have thrown the football. I think that, but I think the biggest key in this matchup for both teams, regardless of what side you're rooting in on, is LSU's passing attack versus that secondary for A&M. Now, if they're going to play off coverage, I do think that LSU is going to replicate what they did last week and getting the ball to their big body wide receivers. And then if Chris Hilton is indeed back for LSU, how can they stretch the field vertically is a big question. I do think that A&M secondary is something that easily can be tested. But I think it's untested in the sense of that I don't think that they've seen a guy that's a pure passer like this yet. Brady Cook was 11 of 13 for 136 yards and a touchdown when he wasn't pressured. So that pass rush against a really bad Mizzou O-line, I think, really affected him. And so he was not able to get the ball down the field. Also, the one that he got to Luther Burden, the touchdown that got called back, that is a situation where he didn't have pressure. So he should have had another completion, more over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, but he didn't. So I think that that's an interesting question. But can you stop that pass rush? If I'm A&M, Dave, it's got to come down to, can I run the football? Like LSU has been moderately really good in most areas and times in stopping the run. If I lean on them for 4 quarters, when do they break? And it's what they did to them 2 years ago. I would assume under Mike Elko that's the same. And I think it's just going to be a really physical football game, a very physical football game. I'm glad that LSU's bye week comes after this, because I think that this is an outright dogfight that you're going into.
Your back-to-back road trips, yeah.
Yeah, right. By the way, here's an interesting stat for you. I was sent this today, so I should have double checked it. So if I'm wrong, I got it sent. I
know what you're about to say.
Brian Kelly in the second game of back-to-back road games has not lost the second game since 2006.
Is LSU you would know this, Blake, and if I thought about it hard enough, I could probably think about it. Is LSU had true back-to-back without a bye week road games since Brian Kelly's been there in 22?
Let me think. I feel like they did against was it Florida and then Arkansas, or Arkansas and then Florida? Yeah, I think they have.
It was Arkansas and Florida, in 22?
Maybe. I remember them having. Oh no. They went.
They did. They played Mississippi State. No, who they played? Missouri and Ole Miss last year.
Ole Miss and then Missouri. That's right. That was a tough back-to-back, and they split it. And then there goes your second game again.
Yeah.
So, they won the set. They won the
second game. No, you're right. Blake, you know what could be a missing piece here, or not a missing, but where nobody's really talking about it because this injury for A&M happened a while ago. This could be the game where they lost. Tyreek Chappelle could come back to really haunt them a long time. Yeah. So that happened. Who were they playing that week? I think they were maybe playing Florida when they initially announced he was out for long term. I was like, it's not going to hurt them against Florida. But I was like, at some point, this injury may hurt them because I think they're moving the Mays kid, right? The BJ Mays, the injured at nickel. This is the game, I think, with obviously CJ Daniels, Aaron Anderson's coming on, obviously, Kyler Lacey. This could be a game I could see that where you wouldn't know it unless you follow college football hard, but you could be looking back and be like, geez, if they had Chappelle in this game, this is where they could really need him covering. Because, I love LSU's big 3 guys right now. And then how do you think this kid? I see Brian Kelly keep factoring him in each, and he had I think he had a target again. Is it a 2-point conversion against Ole Miss? The kid.
Yeah, and listen, Dave, they're putting their big bodies inside in the slot in certain situations, and it's giving everybody problems.
Yeah.
So Kyron's caught a lot from there. CJ Daniels. Trey Green. Dude, this kid's 6'8". Like, he's going to be playing basketball at the end of the football season, right? Like,
he's going to join Matt McMahon in them.
Yeah, he's joining Matt McMahon in them. And Matt said in a press conference 2 weeks ago that, we'll work him back in. But we did, he went to a practice, I think, 2 weeks ago, and in their scrimmage, he was 5 of 8 from the field at 13 points. Dude was he literally left football practice, went over there in practice, went 5 of 8 from the field, and had 13 points. And
I know LSU's had football and baseball players. They had a football and basketball player?
Never. They should have done Shaq's big ass. Could you imagine Shaq playing left tackle? Oh, my God.
Should have got Brandon Bass or Big Baby out there.
Yeah, I want to see. Maybe Spears would be the last one. Spears was
Spears was on the basketball team.
Yeah, Spears was a two-way guy, but then he played football and they moved him and he got too fat and he was like, screw this. But yeah, I mean, to your point, they've been putting a lot of their big body wide receivers in there and they've been physical. And Dave, here's the thing too, man. We don't talk about wide receivers blocking a lot, but putting that big freak Trey'Dez Green in the slot, I mean, he's taking like slot corners and physically abusing them. I mean, he's a tight end with the speed of a wide receiver. I mean, he's an athletic mismatch. I mean, he hasn't been great at the end line of scrimmage, right? But he's serviceable enough. So, I mean, dude, LSU's got options. They just got to limit turnovers, man. They got to limit. Garrett's got to eliminate and start eliminating big mistakes, Dave, like that, like no, without a doubt. Because when he's eliminating, Dave, when he's just eliminating boneheaded mistakes, Arkansas happens, right? Like the second half against UCLA happens. The fourth quarter against Ole Miss happens, right? The first three quarters of that game, he was arguably the worst that he had ever been. He comes in the fourth quarter and he's what? I think 10 of 15. I mean, in that fourth quarter down the stretch, I mean, dude went off. I mean, like he was fantastic in that fourth quarter. But I mean, that's the big thing too. So to your point, I do think that could be a level of concern, but that's why I mentioned earlier. I don't know if their wide receiver like this. I think LSU is going to come out and test that secondary early because they play a lot of off coverage. And if you play off coverage, let Des Ricks, who's 177 pounds, come up and tackle Kyron Lacey for 4 straight quarters. Like, please do that. You know, I mean, Dave, this game, we try to make this game so non-simple. Like, run the double move or do the whack. Throw the hitch route for 9 yards and see what happens.
If that's what
try to change it. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I think that's a matchup. What does scare me for LSU is just how physical that O-line can be. But Chase Basantis is out too.
I saw that.
I mean, the physicality of this game is what is like. If I think A&M wins, I think it's because they just purely out physical LSU.
Shit, you talking about LSU having a good bye week next week? I mean, A&M's got to go take the trip to Columbia next week, which is a dangerous ass game. But again, guys, Blake Ruffino joining us go give him the follow at Blake J Ruffino and at AYS Sports. 2 more questions for our guy Blake here. Again, appreciate it.
By the way, very rudely interrupting you. South Carolina's got the best defensive line in the country.
Yeah, very disruptive. They can come at you from numerous spots. You're right, from top to bottom, the edges to the inside. You're right, like some teams got the edge. They don't have the interior. Some teams got the interior, not the edge. You're right, from top to bottom, I mean.
They're the best, dude. They're the best D-line in the country. By the way, they got a defensive tackle named Tonka. I mean, you can't have a name like Tonka and we not say that you have the best defense. Dude, they're so good in the front on their D-line, man.
Sorry, give us a score prediction. What do you think happens this weekend at Kyle Field on Saturday night?
I said 27-24 LSU. I do think it's close. I do think it's a dogfight. I think LSU's defense continues to get better. I just I just think it's going to be close. I think it's going to ruminate. Hopefully it's going to be I just think it's going to be close, but hopefully Garrett limits the mistakes. I do, Dave, for what it's worth. I feel more confident about this game than Ole Miss for whatever weird reason. But I do see they give you a lot of concerns. How does Connor Wigman play? But 27-24 LSU is where I went.
All right, last question before we get you out of here. Give me a bold prediction, surprise. It doesn't have to be an SEC game this week. It can, or it can be at a conference as well. It doesn't even have to be LSU A&M related. Just give me Blake Ruffino's bold prediction, surprise. It kind of may catch some people off guard.
Okay. I'm going to say this one just to piss off Joe. Navy's in a 1-score game with Notre Dame with 8 minutes left to go in the game.
It's a very precise, exact prediction there. I like that, though.
Because I want it to happen. In reality, I'm trying to think. I'd have to think on that. Yeah, I'd have to think on that.
That's a good one. I mean, that's a good one right there, Blake.
Yeah, Vandy in a close game.
Any chance you think State can pull the upset off this week
against
Arkansas?
Against Arkansas, yeah, I do. Believe it or not.
I do too.
Hey,
I would.
by the way,
If there's a game State can get, and I guess maybe Missouri, depending on the long-term health of Brady Cook and them. But I think this is their game. You feel like they could go get if Jeff Lebby's to get a conference win in year one. I think it's this.
dude, and they play they're fun to watch.
Yeah, they are. They've gotten a ton better since that Florida game. Once they kind of, I was saying it in the preview before. Probably the biggest blessing in disguise for him this first year. You never wish a kid to get hurt or anything, but Blake Shapen, so you could go get the freshman Michael Van Buren in, get him action at Texas, at Georgia against a good A&M defense. You can roll into spring ball next year and throw a lot more at him, so you're not starting over. He's almost damn near a returning starter.
Well, sorry to stay here, but did you see the throw that he made against A&M last week?
That's what I'm saying. I think he's legit. I mean, I liked him in high school when he's from St. Francis in Baltimore. He's a good player. I hate to say this for any Mississippi State fans being there. I don't think if Jeff Lebby goes to Mississippi State, Michael Van Buren is at Mississippi State.
I agree with that. But see, what's interesting too about Mississippi State, Dave, they got. I mean, did you saw the report that came out? They were given $8 million by one donor for their NIL collective.
Yeah, gotta keep him.
You talk about going from zero to hero. I mean, they got to do it, man. They've been, dude. I mean, they got to. I mean, they took. I mean, I love their offensive staff. By the way, Cody Kennedy's on that offensive line. You got Lebby. I mean, I love their offensive staff. To be real with you.
No, I agree. Well, Blake, I appreciate you joining us, man. Hey, I hope for your sake, LSU gets the dub. Last time you were on the show, they took the loss, so I hope it works out.
It'll cancel each other out because you picked a LSU that week, and then now you're going against them, and that streak's the one that lives the most. I'm just going to tell you, man, if they lose, if they win, you're going to be in Bayou hell. I heard the voodoo lady saying that she's making voodoo dolls of you, man. The people are mad, Dave. The streets are talking. Okay,
again, you're going in. They're not letting me in on the borders, north, south, east, west. I mean, even if
I
were to come through Plaquemine over there from the Gulf of Mexico, I couldn't get in.
Yeah, they hope that you have a horrible Mardi Gras season. That's how mad they are at you.
Choke on the baby and the cake.
Choke on the baby and the king cake, baby. So.
Well, Blake, I appreciate you following us, guys. Go give him the follow at Blake J. Rafino, and then Are You Serious Sports at AYS Sports. Blake, appreciate you joining us, and go Tigers, brother.
See you, buddy. Y'all have a good one.
Later, man. Let's get right to our next guest, man. The man, the myth, the legend. Let me bring up the banner for him. I told y'all we had two phenomenal guests. We had Blake Ruffino just join us. Now we have Mr. College Football himself, at least from the 247 Sports standpoint, Brad Crawford. Go give him the follow at B Crawford 247. Brad, what's going on in this lovely Thursday evening?
Good to see you, man. My phone's been blowing up today about the ECU opening and, what I think does a good job in the AAC or not. Maybe UNC might open also here in North Carolina. So the coaching carousel has begun where I live, man.
Portal and transfer and coaching change. You're right. But let's get right to it. You follow the SEC hard, but you got a South Carolina background. Did you grow up a South Carolina fan, by the way?
My father's a graduate, yeah.
All right, so you're fine. So you have family from the South Carolina perspective. You make a lot of bold predictions. You make a lot of great predictions, too, by the way. You're one of the – if anybody doesn't follow him, go give Brad the follow on Twitter. Does a phenomenal job as a college football analyst for 247 Sports. You put some preseason predictions out. Where would you say your thing you were most right about so far through 8 weeks, and where's the thing you would say on the opposite end of the spectrum you were probably most wrong about through 8 weeks, and just specifically in the SEC?
Yeah, my preseason prediction of Alabama not making the playoff, I think, is going to come to fruition.
Yeah.
And it was more so the challenging schedule and less, maybe not as physical on defense as we thought. Jalen Milroe, I believe he's backtracking as a quarterback right now as far as from a development standpoint. And then I think where I missed, man, was Ole Miss. I mean, since January, I have been talking up Ole Miss. Ole Miss was number 3 in my preseason poll behind Ohio State and Georgia. And I think Ole Miss right now is like maybe a top 20 team, and that's about it. Losing to Kentucky. Kentucky's a bad team, cannot score. And then leading at Tiger Stadium at night throughout the game in Death Valley, and then losing in overtime. Nussmeier just carved them up late in that game. It's kind of a disappointing year right now for the Rebels.
No, you're right. It definitely feels like you hate to say it at Ole Miss. If they were to go 9-3, lose to Georgia, something like that, you would hate to say a 9-3 season at Ole Miss is disappointing. But when you've invested as much money as you had in that roster and the hype and the schedule, I mean, you mentioned it too, Brad. The schedule was very beneficial. I mean, essentially, if you finish 9-3 with the loss to Georgia, it's almost like, dude, if you just would have the Kentucky game, you'll look back on, and the LSU game, I think you'll look back on and be like, if we just win one, we're in the college football playoffs. But Brad, you brought up a good point here, and I love something you tweeted the other day. I think it was Clint Brewster brought it up, the question. I thought your response was very interesting, and I want to hear your reaction to it. And then the question was from Clint Brewster, another 247 sports analyst. If the football season ended today, should Quinn Ewers and Jalen Milroe leave to the NFL or come back for another year? Your response was, you said Quinn Ewers to the NFL, Jalen Milroe transfers. I actually lean towards you with that. I do think Quinn Ewers will go to the draft. Jalen Milroe transfers. What makes you so confident you think Milroe's transferred? And I lean towards, I agree with you too, by the way.
Yeah, to be honest, I think NIL is only going to go up for big-time quarterbacks from here. You know, we saw Cam Ward estimated making 1.2 or so at Miami. He's the highest paid guy right now. I think in NIL, from the portal perspective at least, I think Milroe could make similar figures next year. I don't see him as a first-round pick in April. Maybe that changes if he, turns it on the final 5 games or so of the season. But I think the possibility of him jumping in the portal and then just getting offers from, Michigan needs a quarterback. That's all of a sudden a top 15 team if they get Jalen Milroe. Florida State's going to need a quarterback. Miami's going to need a quarterback. Cam Ward's probably a top 5 pick. So Milroe's going to have options. And if I'm representing Jalen right now, I'm probably leaning toward another year of college football, find a scheme and OC that works well for me. Because right now, I just don't know if he is the right fit for what Kalen DeBoer likes to do. I hate to say this. I think Ty Simpson might be, the quarterback of the future at Bama, but he's spent so many years on the bench, man. He hasn't played any meaningful snaps yet. So we don't really know, who Ty Simpson is.
To your point, Brad, like you said, if Ty Simpson were to make the start this week, you're not saying, hey, I expect him to go out there and just blow it out of the water.
No.
Like you mentioned, he doesn't have the live game reps where the bullets are flying at him. But I'm with you. I think his floor is higher than Jalen's. I mean, it's usually Jalen's ceiling, I think, is through the roof. If he can tweak a few things. Again, his eyes and feet have just been all over the place since the second half of the Georgia game. But I do think his floor is very low. I mean, we saw it. I mean, he played probably one of the worst quarterback games I can remember from an Alabama quarterback probably in the last 10 years. I mean, it may be up there with his own performance last year against Texas and maybe an A.J. McCarron performance in the first 2011 game against LSU. So, I mean, since then, there hadn't been that bad of a quarterback.
I know South Carolina's defensive staff. Yeah, the Gamecocks defensive staff was sort of licking their chops going to Tuscaloosa. And, you don't say that much going to play Alabama on the road, but they knew that if they could pressure Jalen Milroe, or at least get one guy in his face in pass situations, they could have success. He had a couple picks in that game.
No, yeah, right. He reverts back to some really bad habits, I think. And he may be a little banged up right now, but obviously it's not enough to sit him out of the game right now. But, Brad, moving on to the rest of the conference here. I feel like we have, tell me if I'm wrong, you may disagree. We probably have 7 teams in the league, probably still as we speak on October 24th at about 10 p.m. Eastern. 7 teams competing for playoff spots in the league. How many teams would you say right now you think get in?
Yeah, my projection in August was 4 from the SEC, 3 from the Big Ten. Those were the 2 leagues I thought would get 7 out of the 12. I think right now I might be reversing that. 3 in the SEC, 4 in the Big Ten. One of those teams, man, that a lot of national analysts have in the playoff right now that I don't is Tennessee. I'm not convinced. Not only will they not win that game in Athens, there's a couple more potential upset bids on Tennessee's schedule left. Nico's not playing well enough right now to warrant playoff billing, I think. That said, the Alabama game was an elimination game, I think, for Tennessee. They won that game. Kudos to Josh Heupel. And if they do go 10-2 and they're one of 3 SEC teams, in that 10-win threshold, they're going to get in. But right now, Georgia, Texas, and A&M are my 3 teams from the SEC in the playoff. Of course, that changes if LSU goes on the road and beats the Aggies at Kyle Field.
Well, you got what? Wouldn't you say you got a playoff elimination game this week between Bama and Missouri? I don't think a 10-2
For sure.
Missouri gets in. Because I mean, you say you lost to Bama and then you got blown out by A&M. I mean, I was looking at their schedule earlier, and I just had to remember what order it was in. But you got what? Oklahoma, Mississippi State, and Arkansas. It's like, as you know, at South Carolina, which I don't even know if it's a game you even win. But just say you did win it. I don't really think any of those games move the needle for you in the playoffs. I mean, your best win would be at South Carolina, and depending on how Carolina finishes, I still don't know if – I mean, at that point, say they went 10-2, Brad, and they went out, but their losses are to Bama and they lost to A&M. Let's just say both of them were by double digits with the injury. Do you disagree? I don't think they get in at 10-2.
And, one of the elephants in the room is Brady Cook's health. I mean, if he's not 100%, the committee's not going to put a, less than 100% Missouri in the playoff if there's, say, a 10-2 LSU that's kind of head-to-head with Mizzou. And they don't have any signature, like you said, they don't have any signature wins right now. So, beating Bama in Tuscaloosa would be that. But, I mean, how really good is Alabama right now?
I'm with you. That's why I keep seeing some of these. When Vegas opened it up at 13.5, I was like, man, I don't know if they're good enough to beat anybody. It's pretty.
It's 17 now. It's crazy.
It went up since the injury reports have came out. You're right. You talk about this a lot too, and this is interesting. I don't really dive into this for whatever reason. I don't know. Ever since I've gotten older, the Heisman races, I've just gotten a little more disinterested in it. Again, I keep up with it, but I don't go diving deep like I did when I was a kid. But I do want to ask your opinion on this. Who do you think's the SEC's best chance to go have another Heisman Trophy winner after Jaden Daniels got it next year? You think it's his teammate Garrett Nussmeier?
Probably so. Especially if he has a big
nowhere potentially if they go win out.
Yeah. 300-yard game, 3 touchdowns, on the road. Plus, they play Bama here in about 3 weeks too. There's signature moments for several guys in the SEC right now. Quinn Ewers is a guy too. I mean, if Texas wins out and he wins at A&M here in a few weeks and then wins in Atlanta, SEC championship game, man, could decide the Heisman. But I think Cam Ward right now is a front runner. Travis Hunter, if he doesn't miss any more time, he's certainly in the mix. And then Ashton Jeanty, Boise State. Those are the 3 guys right now.
Goes off right 150, 200 tomorrow.
Big game tomorrow night against UNLV. Yep.
Yeah, you're right. So it's one of those few group of 5 games everybody on a Friday night will be tuning in. You're right. Tomorrow's his night. Couple more questions for you, Brad. Again, I appreciate you taking the time, brother. Again, guys, Brad Crawford, college football analyst on 247 Sports, CBS. Give him the follow at BCrawford247. Brad, who's going to be on the hottest seat next year going into the season? Hugh Freeze or Brent Venables?
That's tough, man. Well, Freeze ain't going to a bowl game this year, and Brent might not either. I mean, to be honest with you, I think Maine is the only game that maybe OU will be favored the rest of the way. It's just crazy. I think he pulled the plug too soon on Jackson Arnold, man.
Jackson Arnold.
Yeah, both guys really, but you can't lose at home, by 4 touchdowns to a 500 South Carolina team, and not at OU.
That game was over with 10 minutes left in the first quarter. I mean, South Carolina's offense outscored them 14-9.
Crazy.
South Carolina's defense.
I didn't expect OU to finish top 25 this year. I actually had OU 7-5 and caught a lot of flack from Sooners fans joining the SEC. But 4 new offensive linemen, a quarterback who was going to be a first-year starter, no run game. Yeah. 5, your top 5 receivers out. Basically, Deion Burks has been a non-factor because of injury. So Brent Venables right now through 34 games in Norman has not passed the eye test. And him and Hugh Freeze will both be on extremely hot seats next season.
You think I'm thinking anybody else going into the season next year if Kalen DeBoer here probably finishes 8-4, I don't know if the hot seat's the right term, but people will be on him. If they were to lose 2 more games to LSU, and I don't know, you dropped one to Auburn.
You think Sam keeps his job at Arkansas?
Man, that's it. 6-6. I think you know how it is, Brad. You ask any of those Arkansas people. I say this. I was even talking about Beamer not too long ago. It's 6-6 in year 3 or year 4 really does nothing for you. It's just like, great, we're going to the same situation we went in next year. He's got to win 7 or plus. 6-6 maybe in year 2 we'll be like, okay, whatever. We went to a bowl game. Year 3 and year 4 now, that literally is almost just like, especially if you're going to lose the bowl game and it's a 6-7 season. I think he's on the same spot as next year. I get a weird feeling he retires. Sam, I'm talking about
him and Mac Brown. Yeah,
that would not shock me at all. It's like, what else are you trying to accomplish here,
right?
Man? at some point it's just going to run its course. And then 2 more questions here, Brad. How far do you think I've looked at some of these tiebreakers, and I'm pulling it up now. How far down the list, and again, it's impossible to project, how far down the list do you think we get into these crazy tiebreakers? Is there a chance we see a coin toss down the line here?
I think we're going to see a 3-team tiebreaker. That, I thought in August, man, there was a chance that maybe 5 teams could finish with 10 wins. I didn't project an unbeaten. I figured Georgia would lose a regular season game. I still think the SEC championship goes through Athens. Right now, that's the best team in the SEC, but they have holes too. There's not an elite team right now in the SEC. Now that said, all these squads have played so many tough games. I think we could see 2 SEC teams in the final, here in late January as well too. So this is a year of parity in college football, and Georgia, Texas, and the winner of Saturday night's LSU A&M game. Those are the 3 teams I'm kind of looking at heading into rivalry weekend. To be honest with you, Texas at Texas A&M after Thanksgiving, that's going to probably decide a spot in Atlanta, and that's going to be just the craziest rivalry weekend in the SEC.
And for everybody who didn't know what I'm talking about, I don't mean to sound long-winded here. We're just quickly going through A through F of the tiebreakers in the league. You got A, obviously head-to-head competition between the tied teams. B, record versus all common conference opponents among tied teams. C, record against highest, best placed common opponent in the conference standings and proceeding through the standings among the tied teams. D, cumulative conference winning percentage of all conference opponents among tied teams. E, capped relative scoring margin. This would be an interesting one if we got to this. Versus all conference opponents among the tied teams. Formula will include a cap of 42 points scored on offense and 48 points allowed on defense. And then finally, F, which I brought up to Brad, a random draw. Not a coin flip, a random draw of the tied. I mean, they would have to live air that on SEC Network, right?
You know what's funny? The team that comes in third and doesn't win the random draw gets the automatic playoff bid. It's
and you're sitting potentially at 5, and you maybe have the group of 5 team, depending where they get ranked and stuff like that. But Brad, before we get you out of here, give me right now as we speak, October 24th, 10:07. Who's playing in Atlanta for the SEC championship game?
I think we see a Texas-Georgia rematch. I really do. I'm not pressing panic on Texas just yet. I think LSU could obviously win Saturday night at A&M. I think LSU could still lose to Alabama here in a couple of weeks. I mean, there's still some, hot ticket games in November in the SEC that are going to decide this thing, man. But Georgia, I'm pretty confident in picking to make it to Atlanta. That second team, it could be any one of 3 or 4 squads.
Brad, do you think a 10-2 Alabama gets in?
10-2. If last year's Bama team was able to get in at the win of the SEC, I mean, it's just crazy to me. The Vandy game, I know Vandy has improved. It's still a bad loss. Vanderbilt lost to Georgia State, man.
Same year. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, Vanderbilt may finish I doubt they finish in the top 25, but you're right. That's going to win. If the losses were Georgia and Tennessee, yeah, Bama's in 10-2. Now, I mean, if LSU were to win this week and then Bama were to go there, I mean, that'd probably be a top 5 road win. I mean, they would have arguably 2 of the top wins in the country against Georgia and LSU. You're right. It'd be interesting. I mean, I lean they get in.
Yeah.
I mean, just as well as I do.
Chaos needs to happen elsewhere too. Yeah.
They see the Bama brand.
Yeah.
They'll want that in that first. I would think they'd get in. And I meant to ask you, what's your thoughts before we get you out of Vanderbilt, Texas this week?
I think Texas covers.
Me too.
Yeah.
If I'm Sark, I mean, we'll get to the preview. If I win the coin toss, I'm usually a defer guy. I'm taking the football. I'm going to score. I want to see Vanderbilt how they play when they're down.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in their first 4 conference games with Missouri, Kentucky, or 3, Bama, I think they've scored first. I think they've had the lead in the whole – not the whole – obviously they lost Missouri, but I think in the other games they had the lead the whole time.
And, very, very few teams have pressured Diego Pavia. Maybe it's a little bit of a risk blitzing him and his capability, but they haven't seen a linebacker as talented as Anthony Hill. I think he has a real big game in Nashville.
Yeah, Texas's speed's different. You're used to seeing that with Alabama. You didn't see that. I think this one, I'm with you. I think Texas covers as well. But, Brad, man, I know you've had a busy night. I appreciate you taking the time with us, man.
No problem,
Everybody,
man.
Again, college football analyst, 247 Sports, CBS. Brad Crawford, give him the follow at B Crawford 247. Brad, we'll have you on again, man. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Dave, good to see you, man. Have a good weekend.
Be good, brother. Again, Brad Crawford, Blake Ruffino, back to back. I like bringing people on. As you notice, Dave's starting to bring a new guest on every week. I like the dialogue back and forth. People may like it just being me. I like the dialogue. I feel like it gives a different vantage viewpoint for you guys. But we still got 3 more games to cover. And then we're going to talk a little making money weekend, and we'll get you over. I mean, I know we're 10 minutes over, but hey, it's Thursday night. We got college football in the wrap. I saw Pitt beating the holy crap out of Syracuse. So why wouldn't you come join us here as we preview what we got? We just got off Bama, Missouri. All right, let's go to the next one. We just talked about it. Texas at Vanderbilt. Texas currently favored by 18.5. Brad likes the Longhorns to cover. He said it. Point total, 51.5. Kick, 4:15 p.m. Eastern on the SEC Network. Setting the tone. Can Vanderbilt get another top 5 win at home? It's no longer a number 1 opportunity. Obviously, Texas lost to Georgia last week, but they didn't drop far, just a number 5. So it's still a potential top 5 win for Vanderbilt. Biggest game in program history because of what they did against Alabama a couple weeks ago. Struggled last week against Ball State, but I'm going to give them a get-out-of-jail-free card. Again, I mean, it was a tough spot. You played 2 good games, emotional games against Bama and Kentucky back-to-back weeks. I know Ball State isn't a good MAC team. You were tied going to the 4th, but that was to be expected with the look ahead against Texas. But Vanderbilt, very confident team right now. Clark-Lee's bunch plays the most, I think, complimentary version of football in the league. The offense makes the defense better. I don't think the defense is really that good, but the way they possess the football are so good on third down, and Diego Pavia is just a perfect clone to run that offense. He's been in it with Tim Beck going back to their New Mexico State games. Like the way this Commodore team and Clark-Lee are playing. Texas trying to bounce back after getting hit in the face, hit in the mouth last week against Georgia. Quinn Ewers, we saw Arch Manning last week. Can Quinn get that momentum back? There's no way Texas is overlooking Vanderbilt, right? It's a get back right. It's not a get right game. This is a tough game against Vanderbilt. Got to have the eye discipline. Got to be disciplining your assignments against this Vanderbilt offense. But what is going to happen? Look, Diego Pavia, he's more than a good story. Pavia in that Tim Beck spread option offense is very hard to defend. It cannot be simulated in practice, folks, due to Pavia's natural ability to run this offense, like I'm saying, and the way his just ball handling skills at that mesh point. You have to be disciplined in what you can do. I mean, look, Vanderbilt didn't dominate Bama up front. I see that's a lazy narrative. Vanderbilt wasn't just blowing Bama off the ball. What they were doing is giving Bama a bunch of eye candy. And when you're playing this offense, you got to be disciplined. You got to take, essentially, when you're playing a triple option team, somebody's got the A back, someone's got the B back, someone's got the quarterback. And you got to tell your guys on the front 7, especially on the defense line, this isn't a stat game, guys. You focus on this guy. You do your job so the guy behind you can make the tackle. That's what you have to do. You got to be disciplined and unselfish in your approach heading into this. Vanderbilt's been dominating, controlling the games, their last 2 conference games against Bama and Kentucky. For Texas, I mentioned it to Brad just a minute ago. If I'm Sark and I win the coin toss, I'm taking the football and I'm going to go try to dominate this first quarter and be up 14. Because, again, you're not going to get a lot of possessions. If you can be up 10, 14, nothing at the end of the first, I want to see Vanderbilt play from behind and get out of their comfort zone. Again, I'm a guy that defers because I think the middle 8, the last 4 minutes of the first half, the first 4 minutes of the second half are key to winning football games that no one talks about. And getting the ball to start the second half is key, especially if you can get a stop at the very beginning of the game. That changes the game. I think it's such an advantage. But in this game against Vanderbilt, I want Vanderbilt playing from behind. I like Texas's athletes against I don't think Vanderbilt's very good defensively. They aren't on the field enough. They only played 45, 50 plays against Alabama, so it's hard to go get in their depth. I think Texas knows that. Vanderbilt has scored at first in all 3 of their conference games against Missouri, Alabama, and Kentucky. I think look for Texas and Pete Kwiatkowski, their defense coordinator. They faced a similar offenses in Kansas and Kansas State last year. They had some success. Brad said it. Anthony Hill, this Texas defense is fast. Defense wasn't bad last week against Texas. I mean, they forced 3 turnovers from Carson Beck. He wasn't great. They just got put in some bad spots. They need to be disciplined this week with their assignments. I think Texas's speed will be the difference. Add in, I think this offense does get up early. It doesn't allow Vanderbilt to play ball control, possess the football. I don't think the Vanderbilt's defense is near as good as the numbers show. Give me Texas. I'm with Brad. I think they cover. Give me Texas 35-14 in this one. Going on to the next one. Auburn at Kentucky. 7:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Zone on the SEC Network. Kentucky favored by 2.5, point total 43.5. It's a low one, folks. Where do we even start with this one? I mean, this is something you may go show prisoners of war to get military intel. Hey, you must watch this Auburn and Kentucky, at least offensively, both of them. You need to go watch both these offenses, and you need to tell me where your troops are flanked at right now. And they may give it, because I don't know if anyone could watch 60 minutes of that. Two teams that need a desperate win. Kentucky for bowl purposes. I mean, where's Kentucky been since the win against Ole Miss? I thought they were in a great spot to go knock off Vanderbilt coming off a bye week. I picked Kentucky. No, loss. I picked them last week against Florida. I thought no way a true freshman, as good as DJ Lagway is, in his first SEC start, was going to go have a successful day. Well, they put up 41 points, went over 250 yards rushing. The ball, Trevon Ball, the running back for Florida, had 5 touchdowns. That was one of the worst defensive performances I can remember in the Mark Stoops era. Prayers up for the Stoops family. Unfortunately, he lost his mom this week. I just don't know where Kentucky is mentally. If they quit, is Mark Stoops lost this team? From an Auburn perspective, Auburn can they keep finding ways to lose games? Like I mentioned, that was only the second loss in Auburn football history. I think they're 106-1 going into that game last week when they were up double digits going into the fourth quarter. Well, now they just took on their second loss, 106-2 now. They just keep finding ways to lose games. You don't watch Auburn when you watch it live and go back and watch these games. You're like, man, what a bad team. No, you don't. But can Hugh Freeze and this team put together a complete game one time this year? A win here could bring some late season momentum. But what is going to happen? No clue, honestly. And anyone that tells you, I don't know. I mean, Mark Stoops and Kentucky are about one loss away from people moving on to basketball season. They're fired up about the big Kentucky basketball win for Mark Pope and them. Against Kansas Wesleyan last night. They shot 50% from 3. There's a lot of things to be excited about with this offense for Kentucky basketball last year. They're one loss away from people totally locked in on that. They'll be locked in on it anyways, but they may throw football to the side if you lose to Auburn this week at home. I've said for weeks I thought Auburn would get one of these 2 road trips at Missouri. I picked Auburn last week. They should have won it. At Kentucky this week, they have to get one. I'll be honest. I think Kentucky's checked out. I think Stoops has lost his team for whatever reason. I think he really lost them after the Vanderbilt game. Florida should not have done that to them last week with a true freshman. No offense to DJ Lagway. Worst defensive performance I can remember in the Stoops era. As wild as it sounds, I think Auburn comes out with a little bit more urgency. Yes, will there be mistakes? Yes, will it be ugly? But some way, somehow, Hugh Freeze gets his first SEC W this year. Give me Auburn. 20-17. Moving on to the last final, the big one, folks. LSU at Texas A&M. 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Zone on ABC. Texas A&M favored by 3. Point total 54.5. Setting the tone for you. I think this is an SEC championship game, driver's seat game. I think the winner feels really good. Someone will be leaving Kyle Field undefeated with still a ton to play for. Is it a guarantee the winner goes? No. But you would be undefeated in the league with 4 games left. Blackout game. A&M's wearing their black jerseys. They're blacking out the stadium at Kyle Field at night. Herb Street Fowler. LSU hasn't won at Kyle Field since 2016. I was there. I was on A&M staff for the 18 game, the 7 overtime. Actually, Joe Burrow's last college loss. But LSU's quietly been playing good football since the opening loss to USC. The defense looks really improved. I asked Blake, did he think the LSU defense is better without Harold Perkins? Kind of said yes. I think it is. I just think everybody looks more comfortable in their roles. Whit Weeks just playing it. Hellacious football in the last 2 weeks. Was the SEC Defensive Player of the Week 2 weeks ago against Ole Miss. For A&M, what Connor Wigman do we get? We've seen so many different versions of this A&M offense. We saw Connor Wigman against Notre Dame week 1 look bad. Marcel Reed for a couple weeks was 3-0, didn't turn the football over, but couldn't stretch the field vertically. If they're going to reach their ultimate goals, they had to do that. Well, Mike Elko does a chestnut checkers move against Missouri. Starts Connor Wigman. Deeks Eli Drinkowitz out completely. Had a hell of a game. Last week in Starkville, 2 interceptions, could have had 4, I thought, going back to watch that game. What Connor Wigman do we get? Massive game for the SEC championship race in Atlanta, playoff races. What's going to happen, folks? Look, sometimes it's just a team's night. I think LSU had the advantage 2 weeks ago against Ole Miss at home. I thought Ole Miss outplayed them. I thought Ole Miss was the better team. But you know what? LSU won the game. Ole Miss led throughout until LSU walked them off in overtime. I get that same feeling Saturday night in College Station that Kyle Field is going to will this team to victory. Can LSU keep surviving these games where they give up some explosive plays, but they aren't overly explosive themselves? Now, Blake made a good point. If A&M's going to play off, and if you're LSU in that passing game, and they're going to play off Kyron Lacey, CJ Daniels, Aaron Anderson. You take what's in front of you. You take those 6 to 8 yard plays and just keep chugging along. You got to be good in the red zone. That's just what it's going to be. But I think, like I mentioned earlier, the key in this entire game will be Connor Wigman. Does he play well? If Wigman can just be solid, I think the running game for the Aggies can get going with Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels. Remember, Wigman is the key to this game. I think with it being at Kyle Field at night, Mike Elko being the second best defensive schemer game planner in the SEC behind Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann, I think the LSU offense struggles a little bit. I think they're going to scheme them up. I think Garrett Nussmeier has 2 turnovers. I think the Aggie run game with Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels gets going. Give me the Aggies running to a 24-20 A&M win that I think is going to be a game we're going to be talking about for a while. It's going to be a fun one. I just think A&M at home's the difference, man. Very similar to how LSU ultimately got the win, kept it close in the fourth quarter against Ole Miss, ultimately went into overtime, got the win. Give me A&M at home. I feel like I'm one of the few, the proud, the Marines, given this win for A&M. I know A&M's favored, but I feel like I've seen a lot of media people picking LSU. I always say that stat. Since 2019, there's only been 2 teams in the SEC to win true back-to-back road games with not a bye week built in. They were at Arkansas last week, had the emotional game against Ole Miss 2 weeks ago. They're at A&M this week before a bye week in Alabama. Those 2 teams in 2019 were LSU, 21 Georgia. 2020, Alabama did it, but it was not a full stadium, so I'm not counting it. So the last 2 teams to win true back-to-back road games in this league, back-to-back weeks, a national champion 2019 LSU team, a national champion 2021 Georgia team. That's what LSU would join. They would join that party with a win in College Station this week. I don't think they get it done. Give me A&M, 24-20. Yeah, guys, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Again, guys, this episode is brought to you by our guys over there at Prize Picks, folks. They do, or no, it's not Prize Picks, sorry, it's betonline.ag today. We mix in Prize Picks as well, but betonline.ag tonight. Again, we're about to get into money-making weekend. No better time to advertise our guys. This episode brought to mybookie.ag. Use code SECU at sign-up to receive a special welcome offer on your first deposit. Let's get to it, guys. We're sitting at 40%. We've been at 38%. I promised you 55% for the season. We still got plenty of time. We still got through the playoffs, through the championship game on January 19th, the national championship game. But here's the bets. How many I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I got 10 of them, and 4 of them are from the same game. But let's get to it. I got Boise -3 at UNLV. I like Ashton Genty in this one. It's a big group of 5 playoff implication game. This is a primetime game tomorrow night on Friday when there's no other college football games going on. This will be a fun one to watch. I like Boise to lay the points here. I like Boise big in this one. Give me Boise -3 at UNLV. Navy first quarter +3.5 against Notre Dame at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. I like Navy in the first quarter here +3.5. Stay with me on this one. My other one, Notre Dame -12.5 against Navy for the game. I like Navy to be in this in the first quarter. They can just go score, get up 7-0, 3-0. I like my chances in this one. But I think Notre Dame ultimately covers. I like Al Golden. I like this defense. It's not like Notre Dame doesn't see triple option ever. They see it every year. I like Notre Dame to ultimately get the cover 12.5. So that's my 2. I got another game I got 2 in. I got Miami -20.5 against Florida State. I think Miami and Mario Cristobal may go run the score up if they get an opportunity. So Florida State's bad, 1 win. Miami's fighting for a playoff race. They're 7-0, trying to go win the ACC. I like Miami big at home, 20.5. Virginia Tech -10 at home against Georgia Tech. Haynes Kingless, Georgia Tech. I think Brett Pry and the boys need this win. I think they cover the -10 without Haynes King. Georgia Tech screwed me last week against Notre Dame. They announced late Haynes King was not going to play. I took him +14. Screwed me on that one. So I'm going against Tech this week. Give me Virginia Tech -10. Here's the game I got 2 bets in. Ole Miss, Oklahoma under 49, and give me Ole Miss -20. That's what I'm going to say on that one. Give me Ole Miss under 49. I picked that game 31-10, and then I have Ole Miss covering the 20-point spread there. I just think Oklahoma, you can't change your whole scheme offensively, and I don't think they are with Joe John Finley being the interim OC here after them firing Seth Luttrell. Still too many injuries on the outside, missing 5 out of 7 receivers, offensive lines all over the place. Jackson Arnold's getting the start. Bounce back for Ole Miss here coming off the bye week. I like Ole Miss big. I like it staying under 49 because both defenses are still good. Just hear me out there. Kansas +10 in the Sunflower Showdown at K-State in Manhattan. Kansas has not won this game, I think, since 2008. I kind of like them to win this game. I think Lance Leipold and them bounce back. They at least cover the 10, double-digit points in the Big 12 this year in a rivalry game with a Kansas team that's due to win this. Give me the Jayhawks +10. Western Kentucky -16.5 against Kent State. This is not Nick Saban's Golden Flashes. Kent State may be the worst team in FBS. Give me the Hilltoppers -16.5. And then Iowa. Give me the Iowa Hawkeyes. Let me still check this line. Iowa minus, I had it. What did I get it at? They're playing they're hosting Northwestern, but I've seen 14, 15s. I got it at 13.5. Give me Iowa -13.5 against the Wildcats of Northwestern at home. But those will be my 10, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bets this week. Again, guys, we're going to get up. We're at 40%. We can be lingering there. 40, 42%, 38%. We're at 40 after the results of last week. We're going to get to 55%, guys. Again, I got till January 19th. We got plenty of time. Just hang with me, guys. But, man, what a fun episode. We've got an hour and 26 minutes now. We're at 86 minutes across the board. But, man, we did a lot. We previewed all the Week 9 action across the board there. I have Ole Miss covering. I think Ole Miss big. Arkansas, Mississippi State. Need to be careful, Razorbacks. Need to be careful. Taylor Green can't lose this game. Dangerous spot. Mississippi State probably feels like this is their best chance to get an SEC win in Jeff Levy's first year. I think Arkansas barely wins. I think they sneak it out at Davis Wade. Missouri at Alabama. Missouri's healthy. I think this is a really close game, similar to the South Carolina game. I think the difference is Missouri doesn't have the front seven Tennessee and South Carolina have that has given Alabama's offense trouble the last 2 weeks. I think Bama big now with Brady Cook being doubtful and Nate Noel being doubtful as well. Texas at Vandy. I'm a Brad. I think Texas covers this. If I, again, like I keep saying, if I'm Sark, I win the coin toss, I'm taking the football. I want to see Vanderbilt get out of their element where they have to start passing to come back. Auburn at Kentucky, some way, somehow, I think Auburn gets it done. They're just due to win. And then LSU at A&M, the big one of the day, got A&M at home. I think that's the difference. What Connor Wigman do we get, though? That will be the key. We also hosted Blake Ruffino from Are You Serious Sports from the show Rafino and Joe. Follows all college football, but really locked in on LSU. He likes LSU. This week, he joined us, talked everything SEC. Brad Crawford, college football analyst from 247 Sports CBS, joined us, talked all things SEC. We talked a little Heisman. He likes Texas, Georgia, and a SEC championship rematch. And then money-making weekend, 10 of my best bets, boys. We're on the path to 55%. Stay with me, folks. Guys, phenomenal weekend across the board. Another beautiful college football season, college football weekend coming up. Like I mentioned, my favorite time of the year. Got college basketball heating up in about a week, just over a week. Got college football playoff implications. We've got a playoff eliminator this week, Bama, Missouri, an SEC championship road to Atlanta driver's seat game in A&M, LSU. It doesn't get any better. Guys, I look forward to seeing you again next Monday night. Remember, Dave Talks Ball on the SEC Unfiltered channel every Monday and Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Zone. I appreciate you guys joining us. Have a hell of a weekend.